Well, there have been growing conversations around issues of talent development, challenges as far as learning in children, especially in the formative year are concerned, inclusive education and all of that. One thing that excites me is where people lay down their life to make sure that these conversations are on the front burner and they make it even to policies, and the policies are also executed. In very developed countries, you find these are the very important issues that are being discussed and, of course, challenges also resolved. Well, we are a developing continent. We are expecting that we have these conversations, very, very productive ones. So we are able to, bring about some knowledge to all of you. Have you heard about dyslexia? We've discussed this in the studio before, but there's a conference coming up, and there are also some team who are ready to speak to you about it more so we can have some better and further understanding, especially for those of you who also missed it, right? In the studio is Alex Amankwa. Mr. is Executive Director for Top Performance Institute, TPI, Neuro-Linguistic Programming Practitioner as well, who joins us for the first time. Good morning, and thank you very much for your time.
Good morning.
Great. Well, second time here in the studios, Rosalind Abigail Chernate is founder of the Africa Dyslexia Organization. Grateful. Thank you. It's good to have you again. Yes. Joining us via Zoom all the way from the United Kingdom is Dr. Martin Bloomfield, is founding director at Beyond Inclusion Limited, United Kingdom. If you can hear me, thank you very much for your time. We are grateful that you can join us.
It's an absolute pleasure, and good morning from Europe.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get into a lot of discussion, and I can assure you that you are going to gain a lot of knowledge, and we will surely delve into issues that will interest you as well. But let me start with you. What have you been doing since we saw you, had you in the studio? Tell us all about it.
It's been busy, and the last time I got here, I was telling you about what the Africa Dyslexia is doing, and one of the things that we strive to do well is advocacy towards policy and practice. And through that, this year we've set a very ambitious goals where we partnered with UNESCO to train over 700 teachers for the past 3 months. So it was really busy for us, taking teachers through from the basics of what learning disabilities are to how they can support their learners in their classroom.
Right.
And building on that, we have been organizing what is called the Dyslexia Education Stakeholders Forum for the past 3 years. But this year we decided that we are going to go bigger and do the Africa Dyslexia Conference, which I'm excited about. This is bringing everybody who education matters to them. And not just education, but also workplaces, because we believe that our students eventually graduate and go into workplaces to work there. And how can the workplaces be more inclusive for them? So the Africa Dyslexia Conference is bringing everybody together, discussing issues from policies to strategies to assistive technologies to how to make an individualized learning plan for a child with dyslexic or related learning difficulties. And so it's packed. We have renowned speakers here in Ghana, and we have 15 speakers coming from both US, UK, and Dubai, and bringing everybody together on the 13th and 14th of August to dialogue over the period of 2 days, and then also go into masterclass workshops. If you are an educator or a school owner or an organization, you're not at this conference, you're doing yourself a disservice. So I hope to see you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will. Of course, I have that background, so I have to come by. Before I come to Mr. Mankwa, before our technology gets to fail us, which it will not, amen, Dr. Martin Bloomfield is via the Zoom. There's a way as I mentioned, the developed countries approach issues that have to do with learning disabilities or challenges. It becomes progressive in nature where there's not only resources, there's the attention, the needed attention given to it. Whereas elsewhere, you find them either, trying to do that. How is it that in the very developed countries we are able to see this? Is it just a consciousness to be able to deal with it, or there's something extra that we need to also add to our efforts?
Well, it's a great question. Thanks for this. There's a two-pronged approach. There's what you might call a practical approach and what you might call a social approach. So on the social level, the first thing is that we allow people to be themselves and to talk about this very much. So the levels of stigma have been reduced over the past few years, so that I talk about my dyslexia very openly. Whereas when I was a child, if I'd been seen as dyslexic, I would have been shunned and I would have been set to one side. There's still a long way to go, by the way. There's still a long, long way to go. But the other side is the practical side. The research is really quite clear about this, that we know that when we assess people for learning differences, we are able to teach them better. When we're able to teach them better, they get better results, but they also end up with better mental health outcomes. And they'll get better jobs and they'll contribute to the economy more. And actually, we find that once we start teaching inclusively in schools, it's cheaper for the schools than to teach in the traditional ways and lose certain kids. And so what we've found is that there's this two-pronged approach, and they go together very well. So on the one hand, there's the social approach, the reduction of stigma, and on the other hand, there's the practical level.
I see. Very, 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 very important. I'll get back to you on some issues, but let's start over with it. I mean, let's give a brief background, especially to people who are just watching for the first time and hearing the word dyslexia for the first time. Let's clarify that, and if there are some other related learning disabilities, we can throw them in. Well, let's focus on dyslexia. Let me start off with you, Mr. Monkwa.
All right. Thank you very much. So we're looking at dyslexia as a difficulty with reading.
Okay.
But there has been a definition given to it, and the kinds of words that have been chosen in the definition would make it too complex. Okay. We're talking about it as a neurological disorder with deficits in certain parts of the brain region and all that. But to simplify it, we're saying dyslexia is a learning disability that is characterized with difficulties with reading and writing and spelling and the likes, as we break it down to form the other forms of learning disabilities. So dyslexia, particularly when you look at the word dyslexia, dys is difficulty, lexia, words. So difficulty with words. So when you look at it in conformity with other forms of learning disabilities, you might find a child who has dyslexia, who's also struggling with spelling, and with writing. When we talk about dysorthographia, spelling, dysgraphia, that is writing, and some also with dyslexia may be struggling with math, so certain challenges, that's dyscalculia. Yeah, some also may be struggling with gross and fine motor skills that we call dyspraxia. The like. So it's a chain of forms of learning disabilities. Dyslexia has been on the forefront because in the early 18th century, that is where the discovery came about. And whilst we were working on it, they early on called it word blindness.
Okay.
They are blind to words. Then came up a time where they discovered through neuroscience that it's a brain organization difference and not a particular disorder that does not allow children to learn appropriately. Instead, it's a brain organization difference. Their brains are wired differently from the conventional and regular kind of a brain that we used to learn, like our approach. So they are set apart with so much intelligence, yet they don't learn in the conventional way. So I love the saying. I said, if they can't learn the way you teach them the way they learn.
Okay.
Meaning we need to understand. We rather are the challenge. They are not.
Okay.
We don't understand them. And that is why when we talk about the geniuses, it means that they have their real areas of strength and abilities, yet that is not our focus. So it's all about a telescope that you tune it to one side.
I see.
The miniature of the sea, that's what you see. But when you turn it to the other side, the other perspective, you see the broad perspective of several strengths that you have.
I see. Of course, from the conversation we had before, one of the things I said was because I have a background in teaching. Once a teacher, always a teacher. So, and you just learned these things to pass exams, okay, as a teacher or a teacher trainee. All right. Now, in practicing these, once you get into the class, you have a lot of people who cannot read words, cannot read. And it's about sometimes the environment they're coming from. They started very late. Sometimes it has to do with some of these challenges that they have with their brains and all of that. Question is, are there, of course, I'm sure the conference will address this, but practically, educators are taught, facilitators are taught to be able to segment these children to say that, no, probably this person's started very late, and so these are the approaches, because I'm not sure we have that for teachers in this country. It's about wholesale, get in there, teach them. There's always a way you examine them all together, and we're good to go. Tell me about it. What's the approach like?
Well, just as you've described, and Alex and Martin can also add to it when I'm done, that is what is happening in Ghana here and beyond Ghana, within the continent of Africa. But we know the problem, so why don't we look at the solution side? And so the solution side is what we are saying, that let's step back and see where is the foundational issue coming from. So who are the teachers training our teachers before they come out?
Okay.
What is the curriculum they are doing? What is the program? How in-depth and practical it is? That will make a teacher graduate and step into a classroom and be bold enough to say that, I know, first of all, I know about all the learning differences or learning disabilities, and I can screen confidently to determine the level of all my learners. And I'm able to group my learners into their abilities of how they learn, and I'm able to teach them. And with a child who have a learning challenge, I'm able to strategically prepare lesson plans for them and teach them in the rightful way.
Okay.
It is possible, it can be done, and we can start it right from their pre-service training. But then before you do that pre-service training, we need to get those lecturers, those teachers who they are teaching, to be trained. And once they train, they can then train our in-service, pre-service teachers. Then also we can address the issue with those already who are in the teaching field and address. And this will be based on different forms when it comes to dyslexia and related learning challenge itself. There are different programs from the science of reading, multi-sensory approach of reading, which the UD, or Universal Design of Learning, addresses some of these things. So we need to be intentional about it. I see recently a lot of organizations are talking about foundational learning, and they think foundational learning is going to address everybody's case. But I tell you, if you don't intentionally within the foundational learning put something that will address the need of the child who is potentially dyslexic or have any form of learning challenge, I'm sorry, you're going to fail. But that is what our policymakers and those who have the funding and they are funding some of these programs don't get it yet. That there are 1 in 5, which is like 20% of a population, we are not addressing their need. So how can we all work together? So we're hoping that with such conferences and gatherings and on your platforms like this, we raise that urgent call for action for us to look at things holistically and do it well, and not just a check box of activities or programs that we think can solve the situation. Maybe Alex have.
Yeah, but let me go to Doc before I return to Alex now. Doc, if you can hear me, I mean, you have described dyslexia not as a measure of intelligence. You say it's another way of learning. What's the approach to places that are extremely established. I mean, these issues are established, where it's taking a long time, because clearly, if you cannot read in a classroom, we are told, or you are told, you are not intelligent. So you are set aside. In some cases, you are even grouped. And so there are streams, A, B, C. I don't know if you know that here in Ghana. A, B, C. A, very brilliant. B, in between. As for C, these people cannot read, they cannot write. So we can deal with them. Such are the approaches that we use. For places that have these established, ways of, approaching these, what do you use in, changing or causing a paradigm shift?
Well, it's a great question. I teach teachers and I deliver teacher training around the world. And one thing that I can tell you is that there is no nation that is ahead of anybody else. And in fact, this is an opportunity, because in Ghana and in the continent of Africa as a whole, you have the opportunity to avoid the mistakes that we've been making. Still, in teacher training, dyslexia and other neurodifferences are looked upon very quickly, very briefly, as problems to be avoided almost, and the dyslexic kids are broken. And what they do generally is they will give these dyslexic children to a specialist, to what we might call in Britain a SENCO, a special educational needs coordinator. And they'll try to integrate them into the classes, but they'll fall behind because the teachers aren't taught how to teach them properly. And what they do is at the end of the year, they'll give them an extra half an hour or an extra 20% in their exams, an extra 20% of time in exams. But this doesn't help anybody, of course, because if you haven't been learning during the year, then an extra half hour in your exams at the end of the year isn't going to help you. It's just going to make you more upset. What we need to do is we need to teach kids how to read. Now, this is very easy. Once we understand how, we know that structured phonics can help children to learn. We also know that something called morphological awareness can help kids to learn. Now, so as not to get too jargony about this, essentially what Alex did earlier on is he took the word dyslexia and he broke it down into its parts. So he talked about dys and then lexia. This is morphological awareness. Imagine that words are like Lego, and most words can be broken down into different parts. It turns out that dyslexics learn to read and to comprehend and to spell far better when they're taught morphologically. So we need to teach teachers how to do that. Then we need to understand the problems that dyslexics have. So for instance, one of the big problems is called working memory. Now, working memory is the ability to apply short-term memory. So for instance, if you're in a school and you're asked to copy something from the board, you're not learning anything. This is putting all the pressure on this working memory, trying to remember what's on the board and then to put it down on the piece of paper, then to look back on the board and remember where you were. This doesn't help dyslexics. So traditional methods like copying, traditional methods like remembering, which puts a lot of pressure on working memory, don't help dyslexics. But things that do help dyslexics are understanding phonology, that is the sounds of the letters, and understanding the way that words are built through morphological awareness. As Alex said, dyslexia. And that really helps dyslexics. So the quick answer to your question is we're not as far advanced as we might like to believe we are. But there's an opportunity that in Ghana you can grasp right now.
We can, of course, get to that point right now, and there's an opportunity, and that's why they are here. I want us to just go ahead to pinpoint some mislabeling, some activities that bring about stigma to some of these. I may try, but I want you to be practical enough. What this would do is that it will connect to somebody who probably still does not understand what we're saying. And so tell me about some of the mislabeling, the stigma that we discussed it with Rosalind the other day, but let's go. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Rosalind has so much hold of mislabeling because she has experienced it before, but I will give the background to that. Right. Traditionally and conventionally, our education has concentrated on only one level of literacy, and that is academic literacy. Yeah. So finally, our education is not true education. It's not holistic education.
Yeah.
It's more of schooling. So like Doctor said, copying from the board and trying to recall and all that, yes. But then if we target the 3 strands of literacy, we look at emotional literacy, look at social literacy. Then when the child is not being able to read or being able to write, in that spectrum, we would not target academic literacy alone as learning or education. The new curriculum is trying in a way to pave that kind of way for children with learning disabilities to be part. But looking at the 4 R's in the new curriculum, we're looking at arithmetic, we're looking at reading, we're looking at writing, we're looking at creativity, and so they take the R, and the R4. We'll still go back to the first 3, reading, writing, arithmetic, and it still comes back to academic. But let's look at creativity. And so the child is that creative. Before you be able to tap that creativity off from the child, you need to apply one of the approaches we call that SBA, strength-based approach. That is more for recovery and empowerment, because every child struggling with dyslexia in any other form of learning disability has had a diminishing self-image. So when you begin to even pour in anything, you are pouring water on stones. So with the strength-based approach, you look at recovery and empowerment, and then we come to what we call bibliotherapy, where that one has to take up the interest and abilities of the child. Without these, you may teach the child in, say, primary 1, and is not doing well in mathematics, and then the reading component and the writing component, the label should come. Either you're lazy, you're stupid, you're not intelligent, you have to be added to the deficient class, like you said, A, B, C.
Yeah.
Yes. And birds of the same feather, they flock together. So if you're added to the C group, you fly along with them, meaning I am incapable. So incapacitated in that way, how does the child go through?
I see.
Now, we cut off the social intelligence, we cut off the emotional scale and disposition. That child
It's gone.
is gone.
Tell me about it. I mean, we've had this discussion. Let's remind our friends and families who are watching from all over the world what they have probably also gone through and they don't know. Tell me.
So it is hard, like as a child, for me, my childhood, sometimes I don't even want to remember.
Yeah.
I was in the C class, by the way.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I wasn't the only one there. There were a lot of us.
Yeah.
And the sad part of it, which I always make an example, is one of my mates, I would say would be one of the sports person who will be competing at Olympics by now for Ghana. If she had pushed through, or if somebody has held their hand and said that we see the potential in you. Every form of sports in school, this girl is in and she's the best. But guess where she is at this moment? She's in a village somewhere with 6 children.
Wow.
Potential has been lost. We celebrate leaders like Richard Branson, Whoopi Goldberg, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, Archbishop Duncan Williams. He could have lost in the track as well. We celebrate all these people, but a lot of our Ghanaians, a lot of Africans are being lost. Those geniuses are being lost, yet we have them here. And I could have been lost. I told you the last time I was here that at the age between 13 and 14, I ran away from home for 2 weeks, took my aunt's money, and from home to Accra, stayed somewhere unknown for that period. So ask yourself, what would have happened to little Rosalind if I hadn't gone back home? I could have been murdered by now, got myself pregnant, got into drugs, so many things, because society was telling me I wasn't good because I was not producing well academically. But look at me today. But many are left behind. I am just a minute percent of those that are able to make it. And for us, we want to call on all parents.
That's right.
Because it also starts right from the home, where the comparisons is so much and it's so humiliating. Imagine as a firstborn being compared to my siblings. Why are you not doing well? Mentally, what do you think is happening to the child? It's damaging them self-confidence-wise. And then when it comes to the school, because the parents' focus is so much on the score on the paper, they now come to the school and partner with the school and say that my child is not doing it. And then the school will say, yes, your child is not learning. They're a slow learner. And then you buy into that and you write off this child. But with that child, if you have studied and you have listened, you will know that my child loved electronics. My child loved computer. My child loves sports. My child loved music. My child loved cooking. How can we help harness on that to prepare this child for the future whilst we are addressing the learning challenge? Because now we are not saying that a child with dyslexia cannot learn. You've heard it from both Alex and Dr. Bloomfield that they can learn. What is important is early identification and early intervention, whilst also preparing them on their self-confidence and their strengths, identification and their abilities. Then you have your geniuses in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Absolutely.
Let me quickly chip in this.
Yes.
Yesterday, when we sent the flyers out, I sent it to a few of my colleagues, and one of the teachers who's been part of my training sent me this message. He said, please, there is this little boy with so much technical talent and unable to cope with the classroom, and so he has stopped schooling. This is the 9th school he has stopped. Any advice? I was finding out where he said the teacher and the class doesn't like him because he doesn't get money to go for Saturday class and he's being harassed and all that in that order. So a boy of 10 years has left school and has changed 9 schools as at this moment.
Well, we need to change the narrative. This issue of holiday classes, Saturday classes, I think a lot of us have gone through it, haven't we? And once you don't attend and you appear in the class, you are an alien to the system, and so you will be secluded. Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, let's talk about how to change the narrative. I think it's time to begin to speak to that.
When your brilliance and your intelligence and skill is restricted and limited. And it is that day that you will realize the need of the supernatural and spirituality. This is the moment we must come together. Hear me. Enough is enough. It's time for something to give. It's time for something to bow. For the first time, we are bringing it to Ghana, the global prayer works coming from all over the nations of the world to lift up prayer. It's time for the powers of the dark kingdom to bow their knees. When we gather, when we pray together, it gives us the upper hand. The world is in a state of emergency. The church is in a state of emergency. And all we do is to pray 1 or 2 times and think we've made it. No, it's a lifestyle. Praying in the morning, praying in the afternoon, praying in the evening, praying in the night, praying at midnight, and praying consistently. It is time to stop running business as usual. It will not work. The time that God has set aside for you and I, and all you got to do is to show up. This is a divine summons. It's a subpoena. You can't miss it.
Well, it's still here talking about the hidden Genuis in our schools. You could have Genuis in your house. You could have your son, your daughter, but something is happening that you probably are not paying critical attention to. And that's why we're bringing this conversation to you. Dr. Martin Bloomfield is founder, director, Beyond Inclusion Limited in the United Kingdom. Joins us via Zoom. We still have Rosalind Abigail Cherenate in the studios with us. She's founder, Africa Dyslexia Organization. Alexa Mankwa is executive director, Top Performance Institute, Neurolinguistic Programming and practitioner. They all are joining us here in studio. Let's go back to Zoom and let's talk about, well, we started talking about how to change the narrative. Beyond the teacher training, which of course you can touch on, Doc, there's always the awareness and what also governments can do by way of policy. If you want to lump all of them up, and let's see how, of course you spoke about the two approaches that we can use, but let's speak more about how to change the narrative and what to do as we do that.
Yeah, thank you. So there is actually a lot of research on this. And again, not to be too boring and geeky, but there's a lot of research that shows that the way that we refer to dyslexic people and the way we refer to dyslexia actually has a measurable effect on how well the dyslexic people do. So if you refer to dyslexia as something like a medical condition or a deficit, the dyslexic kids do worse at school. If you refer to dyslexia a different way on the earth, is you feel bad about yourself. And this negative attitude that people have makes the dyslexic kids feel bad about themselves. So one of the things we can really do, and it's a really easy win, we can listen to the language that we use. So we shouldn't talk about, is there a diagnosis of dyslexia? Because that's a bit medicalized. We shouldn't talk about dyslexia as a disability, because again, that's a medicalized kind of language. What we should talk about is dyslexia as a different way of thinking. And indeed it is. Your brain is shaped slightly differently, and the neural pathways point in slightly different directions. And what this means is literally you process information differently, or in layperson's terms, you think differently. So all we need to do is start thinking about it. Well, not all we need to do, but the most important thing is to start thinking about it in terms of difference rather than deficiency. Because a lot of the time when you're at school, you get your sense of value from how people refer to you, how they relate to you. Then you get your sense of value by the low grades that you get. And so these dyslexic kids are getting a low sense of value from the very beginning, and that demotivates them from learning. So as the adults, it's our responsibility, our moral responsibility to say, okay, so how can we refer to you? How can we think about you in a more positive way? And in that case, how can we wrap our arms around you and encourage you rather than push you away?
Yeah, sounds comforting, I must say. Sounds very comforting. There are a lot of excuses given. Number, size of class is one, where lots of children, where I taught first, numbers are as huge as, you could have 40 to 50 pupils in the class at the same time. Yet, on the other side is the school itself also giving you a list of exercises, homeworks, tests you have to give, and assignments you have to give within a period. If you don't do that, you are lazy. And so that is also what cultivates the laziness in some teachers to want to say that, look, this approach would be best if it even to the detriment of these other students. Talk to me about what the approach is if we have to deal with numbers, the size of class. Is there any particular, I know we cannot exhaust that, but any thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, the number of districts that we have visited to have trainings and interactions done for teachers. We've had contact with about 40,000 teachers across the country. And these issues prominently come up.
Right.
The class size and all that, how to manage them. Yeah. And the issues they raise also have to do with some of the supervisors and their lack of knowledge and information in the area. And so we look at the conventional way, the number of exercises and why this person is not doing well, and they have to. But then it is very important for policy framers and for educational managers to have some level of training and awareness, as Rosalind mentioned.
Okay.
Then it will stream down. We can talk about NACA, for instance. And so they have brought up the curriculum. And in the curriculum is a wonderful document. And when it is assimilated well, and we put it on the ground to relay the information in it, to really teach and implement it, going to the ground, it will be really effective. Because it's touching on the 3 strands of literacy, as I mentioned. It's talking on behavioral, it's talking on values, it's talking about social, it's talking about emotional, and all that. But even when it comes to the academics, it has broken it down to the extent that there is differentiation. So we have differentiated learning, differentiated instruction in the curriculum.
Okay.
We have scaffolding in the curriculum, meaning that if I start a work with you, I may complete earlier. You may not be able to because of your level and your abilities, but you come up little by little, just as they create a scaffolding arrangement to do any other work here. But when officers come to do inspection, it's a straitjacket. How many exercises have you done? Why haven't you? And so teachers also are burdened, and they are not able to implement it quite well. We need to look at these structures where we have infused them in the curriculum. Now we are even doing the learner-centered pedagogies as per the instruction we're giving. But then when it comes to assessment, we have universal design for learning. But then are we also using universal design for assessment? So that we can we have the disparity, the differences are there. Neurological diversity is there. So we should know that all of us cannot climb this tree at the same time and get to the top at the same time. So if we put in the differences as per the differentiated instruction, and it's well structured, and there's a meaning that if Rosalind is able to get 80% in mathematics per all her assignments, and I am getting 40%, you don't have to compare me with Rosalind. That is academic.
I see.
But then, and then if she's able to read, she's a prolific reader, she's so fluent, and I'm not capable. Let's look also at the multiple intelligences, where some are logic, math intelligence, some are linguistic intelligence, some are naturalistic intelligence. We have all these ones in the visual spatial intelligence, and the person will be able to now, based on his or her intelligences, have his or her education wrote down quite well. When we do not do it that way, and again, using the universal design for learning approach, so that we have multiple means that the teacher should represent the lessons, not just one way. Then we have multiple means by which the children should have their actions and expressions given. So if this is the way that I can give the answer, that's the way you're assessing me. If we don't do it that way, and we put all of them together, and we match them to the front of BEC and WASI, a lot of them will be laying back.
I see.
And they will not be able to climb along with us.
Right. You want to say, I see you have notes there that you want to share with us. Rosalind, share them with us.
I would just add to what Alex may just finish summing up, that in this country, we are very good in coming up with policies, strategies that could work.
Right.
But when it comes to the practicality, like he said, that is where there is a huge gap. And I would use our current inclusive education policy as an illustration, for example, which started in 2016 or 2015. But in 2025, we just finished training over 700 teachers. And in our pre-survey, asked how many of them have been able to read the policy. And I will tell you, there is so many teachers who said they haven't read it.
Yeah, right.
So how is it that a policy that you want the teacher to implement in their approach of supporting students from 2015 to 2025, if a teacher is saying, I haven't read it, even if it's one teacher, we have failed. But there were a lot of them who said they haven't. And so, yes, we will do the policies, but we need to look at how do we get those policies to the teacher in where internet is not even accessible. They understand it, they have the resources to implement it. This is where the chain break when it comes to the implementation of it, and then the resources that the teacher can use. And so I'm calling on our education stakeholders who are in charge of this, even before the policies and the strategies are put in place. I would wish to see some of the teachers that we are engaging as part of the people that are helping to shape those policies and strategies, because they know what we sitting in Accra don't know. And they are the true ones that can tell us the way we can do it and how we can get it.
I see.
And then once it's done, we have to make enough resources to be able to train them, understand, and supply them with materials so they can support our learners.
I see. Doc, final words before we go. Is there any thoughts you want to share further before we let you go?
Yes, thank you. Rosalind is absolutely right. The first thing we need to do is raise awareness of the policies. We also need to raise awareness of what dyslexia is. For instance, I was considered a failure at school, and now I have a PhD and I run a company. So dyslexia is not a lack of intelligence. So we need to raise this awareness. Once we've raised the awareness, we break the stigma. When we break the stigma, we break the fear. Because let's be honest, a lot of people are a little bit nervous of, we've got dyslexic kids in our schools. What do we do with this? Once we've done that, putting in place the training policies, the teaching policies, as Alex was saying, differentiation. We talked earlier about structured phonics and morphological awareness. Once we've done that, it becomes relatively, I wouldn't say easy, but it becomes awareness of what dyslexia is, so that we can break that stigma, so that the kids who are stigmatized don't feel so devalued.
Absolutely. Samankwa, in about a minute, final words.
Yes, two things that I would say. One, we as a country, we haven't known the implications of unidentified and unsupported learning disabilities, especially with dyslexia. If we know, we would wake up. Because if the facts and figures given as worldwide, 10% of children struggling with dyslexia. When we talk about Ghana and we are 30 million, it means we have 3 million. Is that not it? 10% of it. 10% coming out of the classroom, getting into the streets, getting into the shanties and all that. In the end, we are grooming terrorists in our own country. We are grooming rapists. We are grooming demonstrators who don't even know about the reason why they're demonstrating. We are armed robbers and all that. So these are the huge figures that we're coming out with into our country unknown, because we don't know the implications of what we're talking about. And secondly, I would urge that, as my sister Rosalind said, the policymakers, NACA and the likes, when they are putting in any framework in the curriculum, they should invite some of the stakeholders who are in these areas so that they could be of support. Because what they have put there as differentiation, scaffolding and the likes is for the regular approach. When it comes to dyslexia and learning disabilities, the scaffolding and the differentiating methods are quite different.
I see.
So they should also open up for certain kind of presentations and training so that they can incorporate some of these ideas.
Now, that would be a dent if they've not gone further to do that. In putting up a curriculum, you've not gone further to engage stakeholders, to pick thoughts, to reflect.
They do engage stakeholders, but let me tell you, as we're talking about dyslexia alone, we have about 18 different types.
No, I'm saying you have to go further. You should know better. People must tell you that when you pick one learning challenge, there are more. If they are not able to tell you and it does not reflect, there's a dent on you. And of course, you need to be called out to go back.
It doesn't reflect.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Final words in about a minute.
Oh, thank you so much for the time you've given us. For us, everybody who spoke today Friday, it will be at the Africa Dyslexia Conference.
Okay.
And we have 12 different masterclass workshops happening at the conference, tackling different topics. We have keynote speakings from renowned experts on learning differences. And so we invite the general public, all education stakeholders to be there. Go on our website, africadyslexia.org, register and be there and learn, get something out and participate so that we are able to support our learners in our school and our neurodiverse people in our workplaces. I believe every child can learn, every child has a potential, but it is up to us to help them identify that unique talents, skills, and abilities that are within them. So we wouldn't have many people falling out as they have already. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that's Rosalind Abigail Chernate, founder of Africa Dyslexia Organization. Via Zoom, we had Dr. Martin Bloomfield, founder director, Beyond Inclusion Limited, United Kingdom, of course. Mr. Alex Amanko also joined us in studio, executive director, Top Performance Institute, and he's also a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. We're grateful that all of you can join us. Thank you very much for your time. And also to you,